right, let's get into this session that we're beginning with. It's our ministerial panel, and what's it about, June?
Our ministerial panel is going to present us with a unique opportunity to hear high-level discourse on strategic, economic, and policy dimensions of the U.S. East Africa partnership. We have a group that will delve into the core of economic collaboration, examining the strategic imperatives that define the partnerships that exist between the United States and East Africa. So we are looking forward to this conversation, and allow me to name our speakers and invite them kindly to join us on stage. We have Mr. Alfred Kombundo, who is our PS for the State Department of Trade and Industry in Kenya. Bwana PS, please join us on stage. Thank you for being here. A round of applause as he comes. And he will be standing in for our CS, of course, Honorable Rebecca Miano. We have Honorable Evelyn Anite, who is the Minister of State for Finance, Planning, and Economic Development, Privatization and Investment of Uganda. Karibu sana. And Ms. Marie-Angelique Umulisa, Principal of International Trade at the East African Community. A round of applause as she comes. Our moderator, Eric.
Our moderator for this session is David Beer. He is the CEO at Trademark Africa. David, come up on stage. I'm going to shorten your long bio, if you'll allow me. David Beer, he took up his appointment as Chief Executive Officer at Trademark Africa on the 1st of September 2022. He has over 20 years senior international experience in aid for trade, diplomacy, multilaterals, and economic development. He previously represented the UK, advising respective UK executive directors to the boards of the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund on areas such as institutional risk management, adaptive programming, and macroeconomic management. He has worked extensively across Africa, including in Uganda, in Sudan, Burundi, Malawi, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and Ghana, where he has led large multicultural and multidisciplinary teams, designed and managed innovative development programs, and driven diplomatic and influencing strategies. A round of applause, please, for David and the panel as they begin.
So many thanks to our MCs, and welcome to day 2. Here for the early shift. I think yesterday we had the rains of blessing. We now have the sunshine of success today. So if I may introduce our distinguished panel members in a little more detail. A warm welcome to Honorable Evelyn Anite, Minister of State in charge of Investment and Privatization at the Finance, Planning and Economic Development Ministry of Uganda. Honorable Minister, you've held this role since 2016, and so I think you have more experience than any of the rest of us on the stage. You were previously a State Minister for Youth and Children Affairs, a long-standing Member of Parliament, and you've driven key priorities in your ministry focused on wealth creation and growth, nurturing the private sector and industrialization, issues that I think we can safely consider the bedrock of economic progress. Your mission is to harness growth through strategic investment for jobs and wealth creation, and I understand that you have a particular passion for fostering and supporting entrepreneurship as an investor and entrepreneur yourself, and congratulations on winning the award for the best hotel in the region in Uganda just yesterday. Next, we're delighted to have Mr. Alfred Kombundo, Principal Secretary for Trade for the Government of Kenya. You are a multi-award-winning advisor of African governments with experience in over 14 countries across the continent, with the World Bank, IFC, UNDP, ITC, and many more international organizations. You've been the chief negotiator for the Economic Partnership Agreement with the EU, and at the regional level, you've led the development of the EAC Common Market Scorecard at the request of the Secretary General himself. You're a recipient of the IFC's Award for Excellence, and if I may congratulate you on the ratification by the Kenyan Parliament just yesterday of the UK-Kenya Economic Partnership Agreement. Thank you for being here. Distinguished panelist, Ms. Marie-Angelique Umulisa, Principal for International Trade at the East African Community EAC Secretariat. with an extensive track record in delivering trade expertise at both the national and regional levels. You have facilitated trade negotiations between EAC countries and played a central role in forging the linkages between the EAC and other RECs, the African Continental Free Trade Area, and the third parties, not least in the context of the EAC-US Trade and Investment Partnership and the EU and UK Economic Partnership Agreements with the EAC. You've also been at the heart of the development of many of the EAC's trade-related policies and strategies. So warm welcome. If I may take the liberty of framing this discussion for a couple of minutes, the East African region is now among the world's largest regional trading blocs. The inclusion of Somalia and the DRC into the EAC has expanded it to a combined GDP of $400 billion and a population of more than 400 million people, comprising over a quarter of Africa's population. Needless to say, this represents a multitude of untapped opportunities for trade and investment. GDP growth forecasts for the next year are running at around 6.3%, which is double that of Africa as a whole. Kenya, Ethiopia, Uganda, Rwanda, Tanzania, and DRC are all expecting forecasts of 5% or more. So it's not surprising that The Economist has called East and Northeast Africa the most dynamic part of the continent and the vanguard of African growth. We're seeing opportunities for trade growth supported by a vast diversity of intra-regional trade across primary goods, manufactured goods, and services, which have risen now to over 40% of total exports. We're also seeing a mixed picture on the global scale, and I think we'll want to talk about some of the challenges and opportunities from, for example, from friendshoring, which is bringing a lot of investments to the region, from beneficial trade regimes, we all know AGOA, but also the EU's and UK's EPAs, and shifts in global trade patterns, especially on green trade. We're seeing over 100 countries now have declared to the WTO that they have introduced climate-related trade measures. So these issues call for a concerted effort from governments and regional leaders to implement strategies that enhance trade facilitation and economic integration. And this is why we have this panel here. This is a complex environment within which to work. And I'm delighted to have these practitioners and thinkers to discuss the policy and political choices that face the EAC in this new dispensation. So, without further ado, if I may get on to some of my questions. Honourable Minister, you have seen a dramatic increase in both FDI inflows to Uganda and exports out over the last 10 years. In fact, I think we've seen FDI flows more than double since 2015, and exports increase by 80 to 90%. So firstly, how did you do this? And secondly, how are you going to build on this in the next 10 years? What are the sectors where you really want to see investment into Uganda to double this again?
Thank you very much. Habari Kenya. And good morning to our partners in development from America. It's a pleasure to be speaking at the America Business Summit, U.S. East African Trade and Investment Summit. As already introduced, I'll just dive straight to the question asked to me, so as to save time. First, I come from the Pearl of Africa, and everything starts from the beauty of a place. If you want to succeed, you have to look at the beauty of the place, first of all. So Uganda is the most beautiful part of Africa, and the moderator is asking me a question, how did we increase the inflows? Yes, we've been able to increase this because of the policies that we've put in place. First, we had to identify the cost pushers and what can make us to be the best investment destination in Africa. And one of the things that we discovered that was the biggest challenge for investors, especially for FDI, is that they need land. As you already know, that land is one of the factors of production. And because they are not able to just acquire land in a foreign land, we make this available to our investors at zero cost. And so we have established 25 industrial parks, well-serviced parks, that the investors will just come in and plug and build their industries on. The other challenge that we know that the investors do not want to tackle is the issue of currency. So as you know, we operate a liberalized economy. Like we always say, it is free movement of money, and Forex is not our problem. We've managed to keep our inflation rates very low, and that makes Uganda to be an attractive investment destination because you need to be able to get return on investment and be able to repatriate your profit without any restrictions. So that is what we had to put in place. We had to address the issue of cost of electricity for manufacturing, and anyone who is in value addition, we have had to give them a specialized rate of electricity of 5 cents, US cents. And we also look at our manufacturers or our investors as partners in development. And so, because we do that, we have a policy, Buy Uganda, Build Uganda, that anything that you'll be manufacturing in Uganda, it's a priority for us as government to make sure that we buy your products and also encourage our citizens to buy your products. And we also market your product overseas, and that makes it very easy for the investors not only to focus their energy in manufacturing, but to know that they can have access to a market of 300 million people in East Africa, and not only in East Africa, but 1.4 billion people in the whole of Africa. So we have a very good trade and diplomatic relations with all the African countries, which is 54 countries in Africa, and the market size of 1.4 billion. So as an investor, what you're looking at is the market size if you're able to actually sell the products that you're manufacturing. The other thing that we have had to put in place is that we make it very easy to cut bureaucracy and corruption. We do not encourage corruption as such. We digitalized all our systems, whether it is work permit, whether it is environmental impact assessment, whether it's access to land, whether it is registration of your business or registration of your TIN number. We put all that under one-stop center, both physical and electronically. So you'll be able to access all your business, register your business and do it. You don't have to go to multiple offices so as to get facilitated to do business in Uganda. We do that because we know that some investors get fleeced, and therefore it is very difficult, it's an impediment for them. Corruption is an impediment for the growth of their businesses. So to cut that, we have had to start a one-stop center, both physical and electronic, for them to be able to do their business. And most exciting is the fact that we are very peaceful. Now, my brother, the PS here, will agree with me that Uganda is the most peaceful place that you can ever think of in Africa. We sit at hotspots of neighbors where there's instability, but I want to tell you that for you to be able to be peaceful and invest, you will not hear gunshots just going off and on randomly, because they're very peaceful. You can walk with your money. I always crack that joke that you can put your dollars on your upper pocket and walk on the streets. Nobody will take it away from you, because you have to be sure that you're secure and safe to do business in an environment, and that business environment is in Uganda. Finally, I just want to say that this that I am saying is not which is coming out of my mind or as Ugandans, but these are words that we've gotten as a country, that Uganda has been awarded for the best investment catalyst in the world. This was done by the Global Award in Rhodesia Island in US 2023, that we have also been rated as the third most rewarding economy to invest in Africa, the most attractive economy to invest in within East Africa, and this recognition was given to Uganda by Oxford Economics 2023. Uganda has been rated as the best investment destination in East Africa. This award, we got it from UAE, and we are very excited about that. and it's the best tourism destination. I told you that Winston Churchill referred to Uganda as the Pearl of Africa. And now my brother, the PS, does agree with me because he's been there. And another brother from PwC, whom I was chatting with, who lived in Uganda for 7 years, just told me, yes, I agree. And even going too far, the moderator lived in Soroti, lived in Kampala, knows that Uganda is the pearl of Africa. So really, you want to make money and you want to be among beautiful people. And in the world, according to CNN, if you're looking for the most happiest population in the world, it is actually Uganda. So please come and invest in Uganda. That's why we're having an increase of inflows of FDI in our country. Thank you.
Honourable Minister, I cannot disagree with that. Could I just ask one follow-up? We were talking before the panel about your passion for attracting digital investment and ICT companies into Uganda. What sectors would you be most interested in attracting investment to?
Number one is, which is the low-hanging fruit for you who's in here, is digital, which is ICT and financing. I'll just tell you a story, and then you'd be able to see whether that makes sense for you. I presume that everyone in this room is in business, and therefore their focus is actually in making money. Now, in Uganda, the cost of money is high, and therefore many citizens are looking for affordable access to credit. And as such, MTN, that is operating in Uganda, introduced a program in Uganda, and through this program, they do something very exciting. They lend money to vendors and boda riders. Boda is bikes that is the easiest means of transport for us as a country to move us from one corner to the other. The history started because initially trade was happening at the border, so these bodas, the bikes would ride their passengers from one spot to the other. So what they do is that they lend money. Every morning, Ugandan boda riders, over 3 million bodas, borrow between $3 to $5 every morning using the digital platform. And once they borrow this money, they return it by evening, and they would have done their business and make profitability. And the vendors borrow between $10 to $15. And MTN is only able to serve up to 20 to 30% of that population that is actually looking for access to credit. So if you are a financial or a business person here and you have money, my president says we should go out and only look for those who have money. We have enough poor people in our country. So if you have money, please do come and grow your money more in Uganda. And if it's affordable, please do come. And that is one area for you to invest, credit. And you can do it digitally. The other sector that I would encourage the investors to come in is commercial agriculture. Now, commercial agriculture, Uganda, we pride ourselves in being the most fertile part of Africa, and our soils are extremely fertile to the extent that you do not have to really apply so much fertilizer. Most of our agriculturists actually do their farming without application of fertilizer. But we're looking for people who can come and do commercial agriculture and scale it up. Now that we have established the industrial park and we're focusing on value addition, I'd like to ask them to come on agriculture sector and do the value addition. I already mentioned to you the ICT sector, manufacturing. Those are the key sectors that I would think that if you're interested in growing your money and becoming more wealthier than you are right now, the best place for you to invest is Africa, but most importantly, Uganda.
Brilliant. Thank you, Minister. Please come and talk to the Minister afterwards about investment opportunities. Principal Secretary, your ministry has set out your stall of increasing Kenya's exports by 30% by 2025. And the government has started fast in driving business reforms, identifying not only the ease of doing business, but also the cost of doing business as a key challenge to tackle. We see, I think, from the number of companies in the room, the massive interest in investment into Kenya. What opportunities do you see for trade expansion between the US and Kenya? And what are some of the policy interventions and decisions that the government is putting into place to make that happen?
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. How are you today? With much appreciation to Honorable Minister, we strongly value our partnership across East Africa, and we strongly encourage that we take a regional approach towards trade and investment. So thank you very much for your intervention. One of the things then that I will speak about is that our trade performance has largely been good, in my view. Particularly with the United States, we have been seeing about $700 million worth of exports that has easily gone to about $900 million, close to more than that. So there's some upside around our export activities there. For the United States, equally, there has been lots of opportunities there. Some of the opportunities I however see, and I'll go straight to the point, is many African countries have traditionally looked at their exports as trade in goods. And we tend to sell goods and manufacture them and try to get them across the oceans. We will continue trying to do this, but we see trade in services as a very key aspect of how we can expand our footprint internationally. We are exporting maybe about $7.3 billion worth of goods. The statistic that's creeping up very slowly, and no one is seeing it, is that trade in services exports is about $6.3 billion. Now, if you take a glass of water or a bottle of water, there are services that went into producing this. An accountant did some work, it was transported, and so on and so forth. So I dare say that Kenya is probably already a net exporter of services, and that this is an area where we should also see a lot of potential upside in our relationships out there. We also see global dynamics around how supply chains are being formed, where sourcing preferences are being had. And there are lots of interesting new conversations happening around labor, conversations happening around how supply chains are formed. And we see this as a strong opportunity for Kenya and East Africa to be able to tap into this. But we also then need to ensure that we continue investing like we are doing in logistics, in being able to tap into the manufacturing side of those supply chains. And I think that has also been one of the things that has driven some of our exports into the US. Another thing, and maybe this is connected to some of the measures we are taking, we are, for example, improving our investment environment internally, looking at regulations, laws, trying to bring them to an international standard. But we are also negotiating trade agreements with international partners so that we can have a clear stamp of what we are committing to do internationally. We are, for example, having a strategic trade and investment partnership dialogue with the United States, where it is what we call a 21st century trade agreement. We are talking about environment, we are talking about labor, we are talking about small business, we are talking about digital issues, and so on and so forth. We, for example, concluded the economic partnership agreement between Kenya and the European Union, which was ratified by Parliament last night. That gives us access to a 27-country, $18 trillion economy. And with the US through AGOA, we are also now having a $28 trillion economy. If you put those together, that's 25% of global GDP. So really the challenge for us is to try and exercise these opportunities a bit more deliberately, and we are putting the policies for that. I think 2 more points in the interest of time. One thing that I see as a great opportunity for Kenya is our diaspora. We have a very strong and active diaspora in several parts of the world, United States included. And when we look at our forex needs, we see that remittances to this country are a key part of meeting that, and our export of services and labor is also increasingly returning back home to do investments at an international standard. I'll give you an anecdote. I mean, if we are exporting about $7.3 billion, our remittances are about $5.8 billion. And so it is a significant sum. And more than half of that comes from the United States. So we therefore remain very interested in the welfare and the quality of opportunities that we have both locally, but that Kenyans also have internationally. And I think the final point that I'd like to make is that for us to expand trade, for us to expand opportunities, not just for Kenya, but for Uganda, Tanzania, Somalia, DRC, and the rest of Africa, we need to be able to build better supply capacity into international markets. A lot of stuff needs to go into this, but Kenya has taken a decisive step to build a commodities exchange, which has acquired the necessary technology, has developed its SOPs, and will soon be onboarding brokers and being able to get into trade in near time. We are interested in being able to accumulate goods from our neighbors and to establish Nairobi as the regional hub for commodities trade, taking advantage of not just our transport infrastructure, but our agricultural infrastructure and the port of Mombasa. In the interest of time, I think I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. I think you've spoken eloquently to how Kenya is not only an attractive investment destination in itself, but also as a transport hub, and now with the economic partnership agreements being ratified as a trade hub, there are particular added benefits. I think we've heard a few references to the very healthy and friendly competition between two of the economic powerhouses of the East African region. It's also worth emphasizing the collaboration and how the countries in the region are working closely together in order to drive economic success more broadly. Now, the East African community is, by any measure, the most successful regional economic community in Africa in terms of economic integration, in terms of the increase in trade flows, and increase in economic growth of its member states. The EAC is also working very closely with a range of other regional economic communities. Marie-Angelique, the tripartite free trade agreement between the EAC, COMESA, and SADC has now been ratified by most EAC member states. I think we're still waiting for ratification by some SADC member states. What's your assessment of the opportunities arising from this in terms of expanding the trade of your member states, and how can we really maximize these?
Thank you very much. Indeed, the tripartite, the COMESA, EAC, SADC tripartite free trade area brings together 29 countries out of the 55 African countries, and that represents about 53% of the African Union membership. It also has a combined population of 800 million and a GDP of around 1.8 trillion US dollars. So that's over 60% of continental GDP. And when you look at it in that light, it would be like being the 12th largest economy in the world. Yeah, indeed, so far ratifications have been done by 11 countries. Out of the 14 that are required for the agreement to enter into force. So we are still awaiting 3 more ratifications. And already there are indications from some of the countries, like for example in the EAC, where we have Tanzania that has already started the ratification process and hopefully will conclude it soon. And also in SADC, for example, Lesotho, which recently signed and has started. They have reported that they have started the ratification process. So once this agreement, of course, enters into force, it will bring a lot of opportunities with it. And of course, the main one is the creation of a larger market with the free movement of goods and services traded, harmonized, or at least coordinated policy and regulatory environment, which of course will ease trade and investment in the region. So in terms of the market access opportunities for EAC, EAC has been trading, of course, with the other RECs, COMESA and SADC through the different regimes that are available for the partner states. But now with the tripartite, of course, we will then have a singular trading regime. And obviously, for EAC, we are looking at, the partner states, they are looking at certain markets, particularly SACU. For example, SACU are mainly South Africa, Lesotho, Namibia, Botswana, Eswatini, and that's a key market for EAC, particularly for those EAC countries that are not trading, they're not in SADC, they are currently in COMESA and therefore do not have any preferential regime with those countries. With SACU, the EAC has already concluded or exchanged tariff offers, and in nearly 90% of the tariff lines. And of course, the liberalization period will be about nearly, I think, about 60% of that will be liberalized immediately upon entering into the agreement. And then the remaining 30 would be liberalized over a time frame of about 5 years. So indeed, that market presents a large opportunity for EAC. If investments are in the EAC region, they will access the market and various products that they're able to export there. The agreement also provides an opportunity for countries to solve the challenges of overlapping membership. There are countries, for example, looking at EAC, some belong to SADC, others COMESA, and within the EAC context, obviously, the laws have allowed the countries to maintain their preferences. But however, we have to keep on seeking for periodic extension of provisions in the customs law that will allow countries to trade with the COMESA and SADC under their preferences that they had earlier agreed upon. So we are viewing, of course, the tripartite as an opportunity to resolve the issue of having to seek this kind of extensions. Obviously, other benefits are to resolve the difficulties, to ease the bottlenecks that usually countries in Africa face in terms of trade facilitation and the like. There are detailed provisions in the agreement that cater for that. Rules on customs procedures, harmonized standards, goods, and as well as rules on what you would term as originating from the region. So that would definitely go a long way to enhance the harmonized environment that we're looking for, trading environment. And in addition to that, the tripartite is seen as a developmental agreement. It's not only about opening of the markets, it's also about encouraging industrialization through value addition. There's also a component on infrastructure development. The 29 countries have been cooperating on infrastructure connectivity For example, there has been some policies and model laws already developed and adopted that will ease cross-border connectivity. And also the fact that it's important to note the tripartite, as are the RECs, COMESA, EAC, SADC, and other RECs, is seen as a building block for the AFCFTA. Most of the provisions in the tripartite FTA are similar to what is in the AFCFTA. Actually, the AFCFTA borrowed what was in the tripartite agreement. So definitely implementation of the tripartite by these countries, the 29 countries, would go a long way in implementing AFCFTA and creating that larger market. Thank
Brilliant. Many thanks, Marie-Angélique. And I think what you've put your finger on very well is the serious progress being made not only in the region but across the continent on driving free trade through various agreements. You mentioned the African Continental Free Trade Area. It's only been around for 3 to 4 years, but has already signed up 54 members, 47 state parties, and is predicted to take 30 million people out of poverty and boost income by $450 billion by 2035, if it succeeds. Honourable Minister, can I come to you and ask, in the context of tripartite, of FCFTA, of all of these quite exciting advances on free trade, how is Uganda positioning itself? I mean, we've seen increases in exports to neighbours such as Burundi, Rwanda, Tanzania, really driving in the last few years. How are you looking at using some of these broader trade agreements in order to drive your trade and investment?
Thank you for that question. As a country, we are lucky to have one of the longest serving presidents in the region, who is among the founding fathers of the East African community, and who is a Pan-Africanist. And like the PS said, our approach to the growth of Uganda is not only for Uganda, but it is for the whole of Africa. And so most of the discussions that we've had are not only domesticated, but also legalized. They're in the law, so we've had to put them in law. That's why it is very easy for our goods and services to move between the partner states. And we keep on drumming this among the political class, the business economy class, but most importantly, we want our citizens to appreciate this. Whereas we have this already established policies, the challenge the investor community face is sometimes at the implementation stage. And I intend to have a lot more discussion with the PS of trade for Kenya on that subject, because that is the complaint that the investor community bring back. And I don't think that it is at the political class level. It is at the implementation level. We all have to appreciate that for us to be able to thrive in business, we have to operate in a common market, and that there should be free movement of goods and services from one corner to the other. That way, you just have to focus on your comparative advantage of each country. For instance, Uganda's comparative advantage over the global market would be its human resource, which is trainable, which is young, which is agile. And then Kenya has got its own comparative advantage, Tanzania has, and all the other partner states do have different comparative advantage. So what we just have to do is to harness this for the development and the benefit of each other and the growth of each other. But most importantly, to bring the implementers of their policies on board. If the implementers are not on board, they would still be operating in silos, and then making it very difficult for trade and investment to flow, for us to achieve our vision of having a solid, integrated or regional or African continental trade market. My final point on that would be an example that an investor came back to me, and I will not give the country's name. They told me, you see, it's not now a tariff barrier issue. It is a non-tariff barrier issue. And I'm like, what do you mean it's a non-tariff barrier issue? They said, you know, I was getting my tiles from Uganda and taking it to one of the countries, and I've read that you have a common market and you're very proud about it, that movement of goods will be so easy. But in one of the border posts, when I arrived, I was asked to offload all my tiles, and you know, these are fragile goods, and I lost a lot of my merchandise because most of them broke because I was asked to offload everything down. So why don't you also fix the non-tariff barriers? So I think as policymakers, and I can say policymaker here, a technocrats at the high level, we would have to focus more on that, on talking to the implementers, so that they implement the law with fairness and with a human face. When I was just in politics, before joining the manufacturing or the investment class, I did not understand the challenges that the investors face. Sometimes it's our politics that frustrates the investor community, making it very difficult for investors to do business. The investor doesn't want to care about their politics. All their focus is, how can I make more return on my investment? And they do agree with me that that is the way we should go. We have to make sure that we remove those non-tariff barriers as much as possible, and most of it is actually political. And we can remove that. And if we do away with that, we'll build a stronger common market and a regional market.
Thank you so much, Minister. I think you've raised two very important points. Firstly, the strategic focus on comparative advantage from governments in the context of these free trade areas. And the second, your commitment to really drive down non-tariff barriers. I've received the hurry-up call. I think we have to finish very soon. So if I may leave the last word to our host, Principal Secretary, given the strong American character of companies in the room, how do you see the future of AGOA? How are you going to build on some of the success that Kenya has made of the trade preferences that it has received in the past?
Thank you very much. I see, first and foremost, a continuation of AGOA. We are very keen to have the preferences continue beyond 2025. We also see an AGOA whereby African countries are able to do more accumulation of primary materials from within the continent, and the investments that need to happen in manufacturing, in agriculture, and in services need to be done. And we also see that Kenya will occupy a central role moving forward in AGOA. We have positioned ourselves quite strongly as an agricultural logistics hub for the continent. We are making strong investments in transport infrastructure that will allow Kenya to export goods more sustainably, for example, using sea freight for horticulture and for other products, using green containers. We are establishing a commodities exchange that is looking at the entire continent so that the continent can do accumulation to take advantage of these preferences. We are investing strongly in the judiciary, in the institutional setup of this country, in lawyers, accountants, and the skills that are needed for the investment environment to be stable enough for investment to come. We are very strong on sustainability and are actually organizing our export environment on the sustainability model. And we are also very keen to ensure that our international trade agreements really stamp Kenya as the place where you can do business. Thank you.
Thank you so much, PS, and thank you to all of our panelists. I think you've heard a very strong call to action. You've heard a lot of very good reasons why you should be investing in Uganda, Kenya, but also the broader region. We're really grateful. Thank you again.
Another hand, please, for the panel. Asanteni sana.